She thought I was trying to control her. But I was just trying to protect what we had. The night she ignored my warning wasn't the night she betrayed me, it was the night she realized she could lose me forever. I was 26 when I learned that love doesn't usually break in loud, dramatic moments. Sometimes it cracks quietly, in the space between two sentences. My wife was 43. Confident. Composed. The kind of woman who didn't need attention, but somehow drew it anyway. She moved through rooms with a calm certainty that made people lean in when she spoke. I used to love watching that, the subtle tilt of her chin, the gentle way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. At home, she was softer. Barefoot in the kitchen. Sleeves rolled up while cooking. Humming old songs while I dried dishes beside her. There was something grounding about our evenings, the clink of plates, the low hum of the refrigerator, the warmth of her hip brushing mine when we moved around each other in our small space. That's why I noticed when something shifted. It started with a name that came up too often. A man from her professional circle. Charming. Successful. Just a colleague, she'd said casually, scrolling through her phone. I didn't question it at first. I trusted her, deeply. But there was something about the way she described him. A faint spark in her voice. Not desire. Not yet. Just energy. One evening, as golden light filtered through our kitchen window, she stood by the counter replying to a message. I watched the corner of her mouth lift slightly, a smile she didn't realize she was wearing. My chest tightened. I dried my hands slowly and walked toward her. Not confrontational. Not angry. Just unsettled in a way I couldn't ignore. Can I ask you something? I said gently. She looked up, eyebrows raised, calm as always. Of course. I took her hand, warm, familiar. The same hand that reached for mine in crowded streets. The same fingers that traced lazy circles on my arm when we fell asleep. I trust you, I began, choosing each word carefully. I just don't trust him. For a second, her expression didn't change. Then something hardened, not hostility, but pride. You're overthinking, she said lightly, slipping her hand from mine. Not aggressively. Just, dismissively. The loss of contact felt heavier than it should have. It's not jealousy, I added quietly. It's just a feeling. I don't like the way he looks at you. She folded her arms, leaning back against the counter. I can handle myself. And she could. That was never the question. But love isn't always about capability. Sometimes it's about vulnerability, about listening when the person who knows you best senses something you don't. The room grew quiet. The golden light faded into evening blue. I rubbed my thumb along my wedding ring, trying to steady the ache forming in my chest. I'm not trying to control you, I said softly. I just don't want us to get hurt. She sighed, not angrily, but impatiently. Nothing is going to happen. I nodded, even though the knot in my stomach remained. That night, she fell asleep facing the wall. I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, realizing that the distance between two people doesn't always start with betrayal. Sometimes it begins with a warning that wasn't taken seriously. The invitation came on a Thursday. A small networking dinner, she said, placing her phone face down on the table. It'll be good for my career. I nodded, but I already knew who would be there. That name again. The one that had been hovering between us for weeks like a quiet storm cloud. That evening, I watched her get ready from the edge of our bed. The room smelled faintly of her perfume, soft, floral, familiar. She stood in front of the mirror adjusting her earrings, her expression thoughtful but distant. The dress she chose wasn't inappropriate. It wasn't bold. It was elegant, deep navy, fitted just enough to remind the world she was still radiant. She caught me looking. What? She asked with a small smile. Nothing, I said. Then I swallowed. Just, don't go anywhere alone with him. The words came out softer than I intended. Her shoulders stiffened slightly. You're still on that, she replied, turning back to the mirror. It's not about control, I said carefully. It's about respect. For us. She let out a slow breath. Not angry. Just tired of the conversation. You worry too much. Maybe I did. But sometimes worry isn't insecurity. Sometimes it's instinct. When she left, the house felt unusually still. The soft click of the door shutting echoed longer than it should have. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty hallway, trying to shake the unease settling in my chest. I told myself to relax. To trust her. I made dinner. Turned on the television. Tried to focus on the flickering screen. But the clock felt louder than usual. 9:17 p.m. 10:03 p.m. 10:48 p.m. My phone stayed silent. I sent one message, hope it's going well. It showed delivered. Nothing more. Around 11:30, I made the mistake of opening social media. There it was. A group photo from the event, posted by someone else. She stood near him. Too near. His hand wasn't on her, but it hovered at the small of her back. She was laughing, head tilted slightly toward him. Not forced. Not uncomfortable. Comfortable. That's what hurt. Not a kiss. Not a scandal. Just comfort in the wrong direction. I zoomed in on her face, searching for something: guilt, hesitation, distance. There was none. Midnight came and went. When the front door finally opened, it was 12:37 a.m. She stepped inside quietly, heels in her hand, as if trying not to wake me. But I was already sitting in the living room, lights off, the glow of the television casting blue shadows across the walls. She froze when she saw me. Oh, she said softly. You're still up. I couldn't sleep. She placed her purse down slower than usual. It ran late, she added quickly. I nodded. But I knew the venue had closed at 11. The silence between us stretched thin, fragile. Did you go somewhere after? I asked gently. She hesitated. Just a second too long. We grabbed coffee, she said. A few of us. A few of us. Not just him. But she didn't meet my eyes when she said it. And in that moment, I realized something painful. It wasn't the coffee. It wasn't the photo. It wasn't even him. It was the choice. She had heard my fear. She had seen my vulnerability. And she went anyway. She stood in the doorway of the living room, her heels dangling from her fingers, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The television cast a muted blue light across her face. She looked beautiful. Calm. Almost untouched by the tension that had been tightening in my chest for hours. Why are you sitting in the dark? She asked softly. I muted the TV. I was waiting. The words weren't sharp. They didn't need to be. She set her heels down carefully, like sudden movements might make things worse. I told you it ran late. I know what time the event ended. She exhaled, not defensive yet, just preparing herself. We got coffee after. I said that. With him. Her jaw tightened slightly. With colleagues. I held up my phone and opened the photo. I didn't shove it in her face. I just let the screen glow between us. You look happy, I said quietly. Her eyes flicked down, then away. It was just a picture. I'm not talking about the picture. The silence stretched again, thinner this time, closer to snapping. I stood slowly, not to intimidate her, just because sitting felt too vulnerable. Did you choose him over us tonight? Her head lifted sharply. That's not fair. It's a question. She crossed her arms, a small shield forming over her chest. Nothing happened. I didn't ask if something happened. That made her pause. Because she knew what I was really asking. Not about physical lines. About emotional ones. You made me feel like I was doing something wrong before I even left, she said, her voice trembling slightly now. Like I couldn't be trusted. I trusted you, I replied. I told you I didn't trust him. And that's my responsibility. No, I said gently. But protecting us is. Her shoulders fell just a fraction. I stepped closer, but not too close. Close enough to see the faint shimmer in her eyes. I told you I was uncomfortable, I continued. Not because I'm insecure. Not because I want to control you. Because I felt something shifting. You're imagining things, she whispered. Am I? Another silence. This one heavier. I saw the way he looks at you, I said. And tonight, you let him. Her breath caught. For the first time, the confidence in her posture faded. Not replaced with guilt yet, but with uncertainty. I didn't do anything, she repeated, softer now. But you dismissed me, I said. That's what hurts. Her lips parted, then closed again. You made me feel small for even bringing it up. That landed. I saw it in the way her arms slowly uncrossed. In the way her eyes dropped to the floor. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she said. I know. That's what made it worse. Because it meant she hadn't even realized she was doing it. She took a step forward and reached for my hand, instinctively, like she always did when things felt unstable. But this time I stepped back. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just enough. Her hand hovered in the space between us. And in that small, painful distance, she finally understood the danger wasn't what happened at coffee. It was what happened here. The moment she chose not to hear me. That night, I slept on the couch. And for the first time in our marriage, the house didn't feel like home. The next morning, everything looked the same. The kitchen still caught the early sunlight. The coffee machine still hummed at 7:15. The world outside our window moved forward without hesitation. But inside the house, something fragile had shifted. I was already dressed when she came into the kitchen. She paused when she saw me, like she was checking whether I'd still be there. Morning, she said gently. Morning. I poured my own coffee. That small detail didn't go unnoticed. For years, I had made hers first, always the way she liked it. A little milk. No sugar. Placed on the right side of the counter while she scrolled through the news. Today, I didn't. She made her own in silence. Our movements felt cautious, like we were strangers navigating someone else's space. When we reached for the fridge at the same time, our hands brushed. Usually, that would have turned into a playful moment, a soft laugh, a kiss on her cheek. This time, we both pulled back too quickly. I didn't mean to make you feel unheard, she said finally, staring into her mug. I know, I replied. But knowing didn't undo it. The day stretched on like that. Polite. Controlled. Careful. When she texted me in the afternoon, hope your meeting went well. I responded with a simple it did. Thanks. No heart emoji. No extra warmth. That evening, she tried to return to normal. She stood beside me while I washed dishes, the way she always had. Her shoulder lightly brushed mine. I didn't move away. But I didn't lean in either. She felt it. Later, we sat on opposite ends of the couch. A quiet documentary played in the background, but neither of us was watching. I could feel her glancing at me. Measuring the distance. Finally, she shifted closer, slowly, cautiously, until her knee touched mine. It used to be automatic. That closeness. Now it felt deliberate. I miss you, she said softly. I swallowed. I'm right here. That's not what I mean. Her voice trembled, just slightly. I kept my eyes on the screen. Not because I didn't care. But because looking at her would make me soften too quickly. And I wasn't ready. She reached for my hand then, her fingers sliding into mine with hesitant familiarity. Her palm was warm. Familiar. The same touch that once felt like certainty. I let her hold it. But my grip didn't tighten. After a few seconds, she gently squeezed, as if testing whether I would respond. When I didn't, her thumb stopped moving. That's when I saw it, the realization settling over her. The other man hadn't mattered. The attention hadn't mattered. What mattered was this silence. This careful politeness. This version of me who was no longer reaching instinctively for her. Later that night, I heard the bathroom door click shut. The shower didn't turn on right away. Just quiet. When she finally came to bed, her eyes were slightly red. She lay facing me this time, not the wall. I felt her fingers lightly rest against my arm. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't defend herself. She just stayed there. And for the first time, I sensed something deeper than denial beginning to form inside her. Regret. Not because she had been caught. But because she could feel what she was losing had happened 3 nights later. Not during an argument. Not during a dramatic outburst. But in the quiet. I was sitting at the edge of the bed, elbows resting on my knees, staring at nothing in particular. The room was dim except for the soft glow of the bedside lamp. I could feel her watching me from across the room. "I can't do this," she said suddenly. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. I looked up. She was standing near the dresser, arms wrapped around herself, not defensive this time, but exposed. Like she was holding herself together. "Do what?" I asked gently. "Pretend everything's fine. Pretend I don't see what I did." The air shifted. She walked toward me slowly and stopped a few feet away. Close enough that I could see the faint shimmer in her eyes again, but this time she didn't look away. "I liked the attention," she said. The honesty landed heavy between us. "I didn't plan anything. I didn't want anything physical." But when he looked at me, when he complimented me, she swallowed. "It made me feel younger." I didn't interrupt. "It made me feel seen," she continued. "Not as someone's wife. Not as someone predictable. Just desired." Her voice cracked on that last word. "And when you warned me," she said quietly, "I heard judgment. Not fear." I stood slowly. "I wasn't judging you," I said. "I was scared. I know that now." A tear slipped down her cheek, and she didn't wipe it away. "I dismissed you because I didn't want to admit that part of me liked it. I told myself I could handle it. That it was harmless." She stepped closer. "But it wasn't harmless to you." That was the first time she'd said it plainly. Not defensive. Not minimizing. Just truth. I exhaled slowly, feeling something in my chest loosen, not completely, but enough to breathe deeper. "You made me feel replaceable," I admitted. Like my concern didn't matter. Her face crumpled slightly. "You're not replaceable," she whispered. She lowered herself slowly to her knees in front of me, not dramatically, not theatrically, just instinctively, like she needed to be closer to where I was sitting. Her forehead gently rested against my knee. "I never wanted someone else," she said, her voice muffled but steady. "I just wanted to feel wanted." The vulnerability in that confession broke something open inside me. I hesitated, then slowly placed my hand on the back of her head, my fingers sliding softly into her hair. "You always were," I said quietly. She let out a shaky breath. For the first time since that night, the tension between us wasn't sharp. It was raw. She lifted her head and looked up at me, not with pride, not with defensiveness, but with humility. "I'll cut contact," she said. "Not because you told me to. But because I don't want to lose this." I searched her face, looking for hesitation. There was none. Just regret. And love. I gently lifted her to her feet, my hands resting briefly at her waist. We stood close, closer than we had in days. Not healed. Not fully steady. But honest. And honesty, I realized, was the first real step back toward each other. Cutting contact didn't fix everything. It was a beginning, not a cure. The next morning, she showed me the message before sending it. Short. Clear. Professional. I think it's best we keep communication strictly work-related going forward. Her finger hovered over the screen for half a second before she pressed send. She didn't look at me for approval. She just exhaled, like she had finally chosen a side. Ours. But trust doesn't grow back overnight. It returns in small, fragile increments. We started counseling 2 weeks later. Sitting side by side on a soft gray couch in a quiet office, knees almost touching but not quite. The therapist asked careful questions. About communication. About boundaries. About what attention meant to each of us. It wasn't dramatic. It was uncomfortable. I admitted that part of my fear came from our age difference, that sometimes I worried she'd outgrow me emotionally, or realize she wanted someone more established, more seasoned. She turned toward me when I said that, her hand instinctively reaching for mine. I chose you, she said firmly. Not because you're young. Because you're you. And this time, when her fingers laced through mine, I squeezed back. That was new. At home, we moved slower. More intentional. If she was going to be late, she texted. Not out of obligation, but awareness. If I felt uneasy, I said it instead of swallowing it. One evening, we sat on the couch again, the same couch where silence once felt suffocating. She rested her head lightly against my shoulder. I felt her hesitate, like she was waiting to see if I would shift away. I didn't. Instead, I let my cheek rest gently against her hair. The contact was simple. But it felt earned. I hate that I hurt you, she murmured. I hate that it happened, I replied. But I don't hate you. Her hand tightened around mine at that. There were still moments. Moments when I'd see her phone light up and feel that old spark of anxiety. Moments when she'd notice my expression and immediately say, it's just work. Regret stayed with her, not in shame, but in awareness. She became more attentive. Not performative. Not desperate. Just present. When we walked together, her fingers found mine more often. When we talked, she listened more carefully. When I spoke about my fears, she didn't dismiss them. She leaned in. One night, as we lay in bed, she traced slow circles on my forearm, something she hadn't done in weeks. I'll spend the rest of my life protecting this, she whispered. I turned toward her. You don't have to spend your life proving it, I said quietly. Just keep choosing me. She nodded. And I realized something important, the consequence wasn't punishment. It was awareness. She would always remember how close she came to losing us. And I would always remember that love requires both trust and listening. We weren't back to who we were before. We were something different now. Softer. More careful. Stronger in a way that only comes after something almost breaks, and decides not to. 6 months later, the air between us felt different. Not untouched. Not naive. But steady. We were sitting on the porch as the sun dipped low behind the houses across the street. The sky was painted in soft oranges and fading blues. She had her legs tucked beneath her, one hand wrapped around a warm mug of tea. I was beside her, close enough that our shoulders brushed naturally, not cautiously like before. There was no tension in it anymore. Just closeness. She leaned her head gently against my shoulder. This time, there was no hesitation in her movement. And there was no pause in my response. I rested my cheek lightly against her hair, breathing in that familiar scent that once felt like it might slip away from me. I still think about that night sometimes, I admitted quietly. She didn't stiffen. I do too, she said. Her honesty didn't hurt anymore. It reassured me. I hate that I made you question us, she continued. I hate that I made you feel small. I turned slightly so I could see her face. There were faint lines near her eyes when she smiled, lines I had grown to love. They told stories. They told truth. You didn't make me small, I said gently. You just made me feel unheard. She nodded slowly, absorbing it. I was afraid, she admitted. Afraid of feeling invisible. Afraid of aging. Afraid that one day you'd wake up and realize I wasn't exciting anymore. I let out a soft breath, almost a laugh. You were never competing with anyone, I said. Especially not with me. She looked up at me then, really looked at me, like she was seeing something she'd missed before. You were protecting us, she whispered. Yes. And I mistook that for control. Yes. There was no bitterness in the exchange now. Just clarity. She reached for my hand, turning it palm up, tracing her thumb slowly across my wedding ring. The same ring I had rubbed nervously months ago in that fading kitchen light. I'll always regret not listening that night, she said. But I'm grateful it forced us to really see each other. I intertwined our fingers. So am I. The truth was, the scar would always exist. Not as an open wound, but as a reminder. A quiet imprint of how fragile even strong love can be when pride gets in the way. But we had chosen each other again. Deliberately. Not because it was easy. Not because it was comfortable. Because it mattered. The sun slipped lower, and she shifted closer, her body warm against mine. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, pulling her gently into my chest. She exhaled, slow, content, secure. No more guarded distance. No more unspoken tension. Just two people who had almost lost something, and learned to hold it tighter. Love, I realized, isn't about obedience. It's about listening when it's uncomfortable. It's about choosing each other when pride would be easier. It's about protecting what you've built, even from yourself. She closed her eyes, her fingers still threaded through mine. And this time, there was no fear of losing her. Only the quiet certainty that we had rebuilt something stronger than before.